Colorado Territory, 1875. The snow-capped peaks of the Rocky Mountains loomed over a land caught between wild freedom and advancing civilization. In this unforgiving frontier, 24-year-old Kyle Ingram had built his reputation as one of the most skilled hands at the Lazy S Ranch. He knew horses better than people, preferred the open range to crowded settlements, and lived by a simple creed. A cowboy's only true companions were his horse, his gun, and the endless sky above. A man gets attached to anything out here. He's just setting himself up for heartbreak, Kyle told his gelding, Thunder, as they crested a hill overlooking the valley where the town of Redstone Springs had grown from nothing to something over the past few years. The horse snorted in seeming agreement, steam puffing from his nostrils in the chilly autumn air. Kyle adjusted his Stetson against the setting sun. His lean frame cast a long shadow across the golden grass, his face, handsome with high cheekbones and a strong jaw covered in just a day's worth of stubble, set in contemplation. His hazel eyes narrowed as he spotted a plume of dust approaching from the east. The stagecoach, right on schedule. Town needs supplies, and so do we, he muttered, urging Thunder forward. Just supplies and whiskey. Nothing more. Kyle had watched too many good cowboys lose themselves to mining towns and marriage. Too many end up with bullets in their backs over women or whiskey. The frontier was no place for tender feelings. It demanded toughness, and Kyle had learned that lesson early, when his family's homestead burned during an Indian raid, leaving him orphaned at 12. The ranch foreman who'd taken him in had taught him everything about cattle, horses, and survival, but nothing about how to heal the hollow space inside his chest. As Thunder's hooves clattered down the main street of Redstone Springs, Kyle's gaze caught on the newly painted sign above what had once been the Mercantile, Darrow's Dressmaking and General Store. Another business changing hands. Another sign that civilization was creeping ever closer to the wild places where he felt at home. Inside the general store, 20-year-old Zara Darrow stood on her tiptoes, struggling to arrange a bolt of blue calico on the highest shelf. Her chestnut hair, usually pinned in a neat bun, had come partly undone, with tendrils falling around her heart-shaped face. Her green eyes narrowed in frustration as the fabric slipped from her fingers yet again. Darn it all, she whispered, straightening her modest blue dress and looking around for the stepping stool her father had promised to build. It wasn't there, of course. Just like the new display counter and the repaired front window weren't there. Henry Darrow had grand plans for the store they'd purchased 3 months ago, but between his rheumatism and fondness for the saloon, those plans remained largely unfulfilled. Zara sighed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. She had come west with dreams of adventure and independence after her mother's death, hoping to make a new start with her father. The Boston gossips had whispered she was too plain, too bookish, too tall to find a husband, and now, in this rough-edged town, she felt even more out of place among the hardy frontier women with their practical ways and weathered beauty. I'll just have to do it myself, she murmured, eyeing the rickety chair behind the counter. Like everything else. The bell above the door jangled as Kyle ducked inside, bringing with him the scent of leather, horse, and open prairie. He paused, adjusting his eyes to the dimmer light, taking in the neatly organized shelves, the gleaming counter, and the young woman who turned to face him with a startled expression. Good afternoon, Zara said, professional smile firmly in place despite her dishevelment. Welcome to Darrow's. How may I help you today? Kyle nodded curtly, removing his hat. Ranch supply order for the Lazy S. Should be ready for pickup. Of course. Let me check the ledger. Zara moved behind the counter, acutely aware of the cowboy's scrutiny. Most ranch hands who came in were either grizzled older men or rowdy youngsters, not quiet. Intense men with eyes that seemed to see right through her city manners to the uncertainty beneath. As she flipped through the pages, Kyle studied the store. It had changed since his last visit. Cleaner, more organized, with touches of Eastern refinement that seemed out of place in Redstone Springs. His gaze landed on the precariously balanced bolt of fabric on the edge of the high shelf. Your order's not quite ready, Zara said, looking up. My father was supposed to. The bolt of fabric chose that moment to slip from the shelf. Kyle moved with the swift reflexes that made him legendary among the Lazy S hands, lunging forward to catch it before it could hit Zara's head. The momentum carried him directly into her space. One arm braced against the counter, the other holding the heavy fabric, his face suddenly inches from hers. For one suspended moment, they stood frozen. Kyle caught the scent of lavender and clean linen. Zara felt the warmth radiating from his sun-bronzed skin. Their eyes locked, his hazel meeting her green, and something electric passed between them. Kyle recovered first, stepping back and awkwardly holding out the fabric. Looked like it was about to fall. Zara took the calico, her cheeks flushing pink. "Thank you, Mr. Ingram." "Kyle Ingram." "Thank you, Mr. Ingram. I'm Zara Darrow." She gestured at the store. "My father and I took over 3 months ago." Kyle nodded, replacing his hat. "The order?" "Yes, well, as I was saying," Zara continued, flustered by his directness. "My father was supposed to finish it this morning, but he's indisposed." Her chin lifted slightly, daring him to comment on what they both knew, that Henry Darrow was likely sleeping off last night's whiskey at the saloon. "I can complete it myself, but it will take an hour or so," she added quickly. "If you'd like to return later, I'll wait," Kyle said, surprising himself. The ranch hands would be expecting him back with supplies, but something about this determined young woman made him reluctant to leave. "Could help you reach those high shelves while I'm here." A smile transformed Zara's face, brightening her eyes and revealing a dimple in her left cheek. "That would be most appreciated, Mr. Ingram." As they worked together gathering flour, coffee, ammunition, and other ranch supplies, an unexpected ease developed between them. Kyle found himself telling her about the Lazy S, about the Mustang herd they were gentling for the army, about Thunder's uncanny ability to sense storms before they arrived. Zara shared stories of Boston, of the bookshop she'd loved, of her dreams to someday add a small lending library to the store. "Most folks around here can't read," Kyle observed, handing her a box of nails from a high shelf. "Then I shall teach them," Zara replied simply. "Children first, then their parents if they wish." Kyle found himself smiling, something he rarely did in town. "You've got big plans for Redstone Springs, Miss Darrow." "Someone should," she said, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I don't mean to sound critical. It's a fine town, just rough around the edges," Kyle suggested. "Like most things worth caring about," Zara answered softly, her eyes meeting his again with that same electric connection. The moment was broken by the sound of the door swinging open, followed by angry male voices. 3 men entered, trail-worn, dusty, with hard eyes and hands that hovered near their holsters. Kyle recognized the lead man immediately, Jackson Cole, a notorious horse thief who'd escaped hanging in Wyoming the previous year. "Well now, what have we here?" Cole drawled, his gaze sliding over Zara in a way that made Kyle's jaw tighten. "Prettiest little shopkeeper I've ever seen." Zara straightened her spine. "Gentlemen, welcome to Darrow's. How may I help you today?" Cole sauntered closer, ignoring Kyle completely. "Oh, I can think of several ways a pretty thing like you could help me." "They're not staying," Kyle said quietly, moving to stand between Zara and the newcomers. "Store's closing early today." Cole's eyes narrowed as he finally focused on Kyle. "Don't believe I was talking to you, Cowboy." "Don't believe the lady was interested in what you were saying," Kyle countered, his voice level but with an edge of steel. For a tense moment, the air crackled with potential violence. Kyle was acutely aware of Zara behind him, of the 3 men before him, of the odds stacked against him should this turn ugly. But something in his steady gaze must have given Cole pause. "Another time, perhaps," Cole finally said with a mocking tip of his hat toward Zara. "We'll be in town a while. Plenty of chances to get acquainted." After they left, Zara released a shaky breath. "Thank you." Again, Kyle turned to find her looking pale but composed. "You should get your father to mind the store when those men are around," he said, more gruffly than intended. "My father is rarely in a condition to mind anything these days," she replied with quiet dignity. "I manage on my own." Kyle studied her. This Eastern woman with her proper speech and delicate manners, somehow surviving in a town like Redstone Springs. Something about her courage in the face of such odds stirred him. "I'll be back in town tomorrow," he found himself saying. "Need to check on those men. Make sure they're not causing trouble." Zara's smile returned, warming her entire face. "The store opens at 8 o'clock sharp, Mr. Ingram." As Kyle rode back to the Lazy S, supplies secured behind his saddle, he couldn't shake the image of Zara Darrow's smile from his mind. It troubled him more than he cared to admit. Attachments were dangerous out here. A man who let himself care too much ended up distracted, vulnerable, broken. Just checking on those horse thieves, he told Thunder as they crossed the open range. Making sure the town's safe. That's all. But the hollow space in his chest felt a little less empty than before. Over the next 3 weeks, Kyle found increasingly creative reasons to visit Redstone Springs. The ranch needed more supplies. He had to deliver a message to the blacksmith. Sheriff Tanner had asked him to keep an eye on Cole and his men, who seemed in no hurry to leave town. Each time, he found himself at Darrow's general store, helping Zara reach high shelves, carrying heavy crates, or simply talking as she worked. He learned that she loved poetry and had memorized dozens of verses. She discovered his unexpected knowledge of birds and his talent for whittling small wooden animals, which he sheepishly admitted to creating during long, lonely nights watching the herd. "You have an artist's hands," she told him one afternoon, examining a tiny wooden meadowlark he'd carved. "Just a cowboy's hands," Kyle corrected, suddenly self-conscious of their roughness, the calluses and small scars that mapped years of hard work. "The two aren't mutually exclusive," Zara insisted, her fingers briefly touching his, sending warmth up his arm. On a crisp October afternoon, Kyle arrived in town to find the store closed early. Concerned, he asked around until Mrs. Hollister, the baker's wife, informed him that Henry Darrow had fallen badly the previous night, breaking his leg. "Poor girl's been running herself ragged," Mrs. Hollister clucked. "Tending her father, trying to keep the store open. Doctor says Mr. Darrow will be laid up for months, and there she is, all alone with no family to help." Kyle found Zara at her small house behind the store, struggling to carry buckets of water from the well. Without a word, he took them from her hands. "Mr. Ingram," she said, surprise evident in her tired face. "I didn't expect—" "Kyle," he interrupted. "After all this time, you might as well use my given name." A small smile touched her lips. "Kyle, then. And I'm Zara. How's your father?" Her smile faded. "In considerable pain. And considerable temper because of it. The doctor left laudanum, but—" She hesitated. "He's already too fond of things that dull his senses." Kyle nodded, understanding her dilemma. "What can I do?" For a moment, Zara looked as though she might cry. Then she squared her shoulders. "Nothing. We'll manage. We always do." "Zara," Kyle said quietly, setting down the water buckets. "Let me help." Something in his voice must have reached her, because her careful composure cracked. "I don't know how I'll keep the store running," she confessed. "The new shipment arrives tomorrow, and I can't possibly unload it alone. And if we close for even a week, we might lose everything." And Kyle surprised them both by reaching out to take her hand. "You won't be alone." The next morning, Kyle arrived at dawn with 2 other lazy-ass cowboys. By the time Zara opened the store's front door, they had already unloaded the entire shipment from the freight wagon and were organizing goods on the storeroom shelves. "I can't accept all this help without payment," Zara protested, watching the cowboys work. "You can and you will," Kyle replied firmly. "Besides, I've worked out a deal with the boss. The lazy ass will handle your heavy deliveries for the next few months. In exchange, you'll order some special books he wants for his daughter's education." Zara's eyes widened. "That's hardly a fair exchange." Kyle shrugged, a half-smile playing at his lips. Boss's daughter means everything to him. He'd pay any price to see her educated proper. It wasn't entirely a lie. The ranch owner, Mr. Sullivan, did indeed care about his daughter's education. But Kyle had also offered to work extra shifts and handle the most difficult horses to compensate for the time he and the other hands would spend helping at the store. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Kyle would ride into town 3 mornings a week to help at the store before completing his other duties. Sometimes other ranch hands joined him, but often it was just the 2 of them, Kyle and Zara, working side by side, talking, laughing, sharing pieces of themselves neither had shared before. Kyle told her about the fire that had taken his family, about learning to survive on his own, about the nightmares that still sometimes woke him. Zara confided her fears about her father's drinking, her mother's long illness in Boston, her doubts about ever fitting into frontier life. "The ladies at church still look at me like I'm some exotic creature," she admitted one day as they inventoried supplies. "Mrs. Hollister actually asked if I owned a proper dress for the harvest social, as though I've been wearing bearskins all this time." Kyle chuckled, imagining Zara's response. What did you tell her? That in Boston, we preferred mountain lion skins for formal occasions, Zara replied with a mischievous grin. Their laughter filled the store, and Kyle felt that hollow space in his chest shrinking a little more each day. It was dangerous, he knew. She was putting down roots in town. He belonged to the open range. She deserved someone educated, refined, not a cowboy with rough hands and nightmares. But he couldn't bring himself to stay away. The harvest social loomed, and Kyle surprised himself by asking if he might escort her. I'd be honored, Zara said, her cheeks flushing. Though you should know that my dancing is passable at best. Boston quadrilles don't appear much at frontier gatherings. My dancing's worse than passable, Kyle admitted. But I reckon we can stumble through together. The night of the social, Kyle arrived at Zara's door in his best clothes, a clean white shirt, dark vest, and string tie. His usual stubble shaved clean, his dark hair neatly combed. When Zara opened the door, he momentarily forgot how to breathe. She wore a dress of deep green that matched her eyes, her chestnut hair arranged in soft curls around her face. Nothing extravagant by Eastern standards, perhaps, but to Kyle, she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. You look, he started, then faltered, words failing him. Zara's smile wavered. Is it too much? Mrs. Hollister helped me alter one of my Boston dresses, but if it's inappropriate, beautiful, Kyle finally managed. You look beautiful. The social was held in the newly constructed church hall, decorated with autumn leaves and hay bales. Lanterns cast a warm glow over the gathered townspeople, and a small band played lively tunes in the corner. Kyle and Zara danced clumsily but happily, laughing at their mistakes. During a break in the dancing, Kyle fetched them cups of cider. As he returned, he overheard Zara speaking with several town women. Must be exciting to have a handsome cowboy calling on you, Mrs. Hollister was saying. Kyle has been very kind, Zara replied carefully. He's helped immensely with the store while my father recovers. Kind, is it? Another woman said with a knowing smile. A man who looks like that doesn't spend time helping at a store just to be kind, dear. What else would it be? Zara asked, her voice suddenly smaller. The women exchanged glances. Well, Mrs. Hollister said gently, you are new to our ways, but surely you understand that a man like Kyle Ingram, respected on every ranch from here to Denver, could have his pick of women. If he's showing interest in you, it must be because. She trailed off, but another woman finished for her. Because you own a business he might someday want to stake in. Kyle froze, anger surging through him. Before he could step forward to defend himself and Zara, he heard her response. Or perhaps, Zara said with quiet dignity, it's because I'm not pretty enough or accomplished enough to pose any real threat. A safe friendship for a man who values his independence. After all, who would expect Kyle Ingram to seriously court someone like me? The defeat in her voice cut through Kyle like a knife. Is that truly what she thought? That he spent time with her because she was convenient or safe? The realization that his own guarded behavior might have reinforced such a belief made him sick with regret. He approached then, making his presence known, and the other women quickly dispersed. Zara's smile was back in place, but it didn't reach her eyes. Your cider, Kyle said, handing her a cup, searching her face for some sign of what to say next. Before he could find the right words, the church doors burst open. Jackson Cole and his men staggered in, clearly drunk and looking for trouble. Well, ain't this civilized? Cole slurred, his hand resting on his holstered gun. Whole town gathered up like sitting ducks. The music stopped. Parents pulled children behind them. Sheriff Tanner stepped forward, hand on his own gun. You boys need to leave. This is a private gathering. Cole ignored him, his gaze sweeping the room until it landed on Zara. There's my pretty shopkeeper. Save me a dance, did you? Kyle moved protectively in front of Zara, his body tense. The lady's spoken for, he said evenly. Cole's eyes narrowed. Still hiding behind your cowboy, I see. What's he got that's so special, hm? Can't be much if he's settled for a plain little thing like you. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Kyle felt Zara stiffen behind him. Get out, Cole, Kyle said, his voice dangerously quiet. Before this gets ugly. Cole drew his gun with surprising speed for a drunk man. Already ugly, cowboy. Question is, what are you willing to do about it? What happened next unfolded in seconds. Cole fired a wild shot that splintered the wood beside Kyle's head. Kyle tackled him, driving him backward through the doors and onto the church steps. They grappled for control of the gun, rolling down the steps onto the dirt street. Kyle was stronger, but Cole fought dirty. He bit, scratched, and finally pulled a hidden knife, slashing it across Kyle's arm. The sharp pain made Kyle's grip loosen just enough for Cole to scramble away. "You're dead, Ingram," Cole snarled, raising his gun again. A single shot cracked through the night. Cole looked surprised, then crumpled to the ground. Behind him stood Sheriff Tanner, his smoking gun still raised. "Been waiting for an excuse," the sheriff said grimly. Cole's two companions surrendered immediately, hands raised high. Kyle was barely aware of the commotion around him as the sheriff took control of the situation. His attention was fixed on Zara, who had run to his side and was now pressing her handkerchief against his bleeding arm. "You're hurt," she said, her voice trembling. "It's nothing," Kyle assured her, though the cut burned like fire. "It's not nothing," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "He could have killed you." "Zara, no," she interrupted fiercely. "Don't you dare dismiss this. Don't you dare act like your life means nothing just because you're a cowboy, and that's what cowboys do. Face death without blinking." "Not when she stopped abruptly. "When you what?" Kyle asked softly. Instead of answering, Zara pressed her lips together and focused on bandaging his arm with a strip torn from her petticoat. Later that night, after the doctor had properly cleaned and stitched Kyle's wound, they sat on the porch of Zara's house. The air between them was charged with things unsaid. In the distance, they could still hear the commotion at the jailhouse as the sheriff processed Cole's companions. "What you overheard at the social," Kyle finally said. "About me spending time with you because of your business? Or because you're safe?" Zara looked away. "You don't need to explain. I understand how these arrangements work. You've been incredibly helpful, and I'm grateful." "No," Kyle interrupted, more forcefully than he intended. He gentled his voice. "No, that's not it at all." Taking a deep breath, he turned to face her fully. "I've spent my life believing that caring for someone was a weakness I couldn't afford, that the frontier was no place for feelings." He struggled with the words, unaccustomed to speaking what was in his heart. "But then I met you, and everything I thought I knew just fell apart." Zara's eyes widened, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. "Kyle, I didn't help you because of your store or because you're safe," he continued. "I helped you because I couldn't stand the thought of not seeing you. Because every time I ride back to the ranch, I'm already thinking about when I can return." Zara's hands trembled in her lap. "The women at the social, they implied that someone like you wouldn't seriously court someone like me. That I'm not the kind of woman a man like you would." "They're wrong," Kyle said firmly. "Dead wrong." He hesitated, then added softly. "Unless you think a woman like you, educated, refined, kind, couldn't possibly care for a rough cowboy like me. I think," Zara said carefully, "that I stopped caring about what kind of man I was supposed to want the day you caught that bolt of fabric before it could hit me." Kyle's heart hammered in his chest. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he reached out to take her hand. When she twined her fingers with his, the last of his resistance crumbled. "Zara," he said hoarsely, "I've never done this before. Never courted anyone proper. But if you'll have me, I'd like to try." Her smile bloomed like sunrise over the mountains. "I'd like that very much." Their courtship unfolded through the winter months, as snow blanketed Redstone Springs and the surrounding ranges. Kyle still worked at the Lazy S, but he arranged his schedule to spend 3 days each week in town. He took a room at the boarding house, helped at the store, and slowly, carefully, built something he'd never thought possible, a future with someone else in it. They faced challenges, of course. Henry Darrow initially opposed the match, believing his daughter deserved a professional man, not a cowboy. The town gossips speculated about their intentions. Kyle's nightmares sometimes still woke him, leaving him distant and withdrawn until Zara's patient understanding drew him back. But there were joys too. Sleigh rides through snow-covered pines, reading poetry by lamplight after closing the store, Kyle teaching Zara to shoot and ride properly, Zara introducing Kyle to Shakespeare and watching his unexpectedly passionate response to the tragedies. By early spring, they had settled into a rhythm that felt both comfortable and thrilling. Kyle had even begun to consider whether he might someday transition from ranch work to something that would keep him in town more regularly. The hollow space in his chest had filled with a warmth he'd never known before. Then came the telegram that shattered everything. Kyle was at the store helping Zara unpack a new shipment of fabrics when Ned, the telegraph operator's son, burst through the door. "Message for Miss Darrow," the boy announced, thrusting a yellow paper into Zara's hands. Kyle watched as Zara read the telegram, her face draining of color. "What is it?" he asked, moving to her side. "My uncle," she whispered. "In Boston. He's dead." Kyle put a supportive arm around her shoulders. "I'm sorry. Were you close?" Zara shook her head. "Not particularly. He was my mother's brother. But he was an investor in the store. The principal investor, in fact." She looked up at Kyle, her eyes filling with tears. "He's left his share of the business to his son, my cousin Thomas, who intends to sell it immediately." The implications hit Kyle like a physical blow. Without the store, Zara and her father would have nothing. No income, no home, no future in Redstone Springs. "What will you do?" he asked, dreading the answer. Zara's hand shook as she held out the telegram. "Thomas has offered a solution. He'll retain ownership if—" She swallowed hard. "If I agree to marry him and return to Boston to help run his import business." Kyle felt as though the ground had dropped from beneath his feet. "Marry him? Your cousin?" "Second cousin," Zara clarified. "It's not uncommon in Boston society. A business arrangement more than anything." Her eyes searched Kyle's face. "I don't want to go. But my father, without the store income, his medical care, our home." Kyle stepped back, his mind racing. Everything they'd built over these months, the future he'd begun to imagine, gone in an instant. And worse, he had nothing substantial to offer as an alternative. His savings were modest. He owned no property. He couldn't support her and her father on a cowboy's wages. "When does he need your answer?" he asked, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. "The telegram says he'll be arriving by train in 2 weeks to settle matters," Zara replied, watching him closely. "Kyle, I don't expect you to. I need to think," he interrupted, already moving toward the door. I'll come back later." He left before she could respond, mounting thunder and galloping out of town as if demons pursued him. His mind filled with images of Zara in Boston, married to a man she didn't love, lost to him forever. But what right did he have to ask her to choose poverty with him over security with her cousin? For 3 days, Kyle avoided town, throwing himself into the most demanding ranch work he could find. He broke the wildest horses, mended the most distant fence lines, volunteered for the coldest night watches. Anything to exhaust himself enough that he wouldn't have to think about Zara or the choice that lay before her. On the 4th day, Mr. Sullivan found him repairing a windmill in the far northwest corner of the ranch. "Heard about Miss Darrow's situation," the older man said without preamble, dismounting stiffly from his horse. "Whole town's talking." Kyle focused on tightening a bolt. "Not much I can do about it." Sullivan studied him for a long moment. "You know, when I first started this ranch, I had nothing but 20 cattle and a broken-down wagon. My Eliza married me anyway. Her father nearly disowned her, thought she was throwing her life away on a fool's dream." Kyle said nothing, but his hands stilled on the wrench. "Thing is," Sullivan continued, "she didn't marry the ranch I might someday build. She married me because she believed in what we could create together." He cleared his throat. "That girl in town looks at you the same way Eliza looked at me. Like you're the horizon she wants to walk toward, no matter what lies between." "She needs security," Kyle said, his voice rough. "Her father needs medical care. I can't provide that on cowboy wages." Sullivan nodded. "True enough. Which is why I've been meaning to talk to you about a business proposition." Kyle finally looked up. "Sir, Army contract I've been considering," Sullivan explained. "Breeding and training horses specifically for cavalry use. Needs someone who understands horses like they're his own kin." He fixed Kyle with a meaningful look. "Someone who might be ready to put down roots. Become a partner, not just a hand." Hope flickered in Kyle's chest, but he tamped it down. "That's generous, but not generous," Sullivan corrected. "Smart business. You're the best horseman in 3 territories, and I'm tired of watching other ranches try to lure you away. Partnership gives you a stake in the land, a percentage of profits, and a future to offer that young woman, if that's what you want." As Sullivan's words sank in, Kyle felt the walls he'd built around his heart crumbling completely. A future, a real future with Zara, built on solid ground. "I need to go to town," he said, already moving toward his horse. Sullivan smiled. "Figured you might." Consider yourself on leave until further notice. Kyle rode harder than he'd ever ridden, pushing Thunder to his limits. By the time he reached Redstone Springs, dusk was falling, casting long shadows across the main street. He tied Thunder at the hitching post outside the store and rushed inside, only to find Zara Darrow alone behind the counter, his splinted leg propped on a stool. "She's not here," the older man said, his expression unreadable. Kyle's heart sank. Did she already leave for Boston? Henry shook his head. Gone up to Widow Matthews' place, helping with her new baby. He studied Kyle with narrowed eyes. "Been 4 days, Ingram. 4 days with no word while my daughter cried herself to sleep." Kyle flinched at the accusation. "I needed time to figure things out." "And did you? Figure things out?" "Yes, sir, I believe I did." Kyle squared his shoulders. "I'd like to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. I can offer her a future now, a partnership in the Lazy S, breeding horses for the Army. It won't be Boston luxury, but it'll be secure." Henry gave a short bark of laughter. "You think I care about Boston luxury? I dragged my daughter halfway across the country to escape all that." His expression softened slightly. "What I care about is her happiness. These past 4 days, I've seen what your absence does to her." He leaned forward, jabbing a finger at Kyle. "So before I give any blessing, you tell me true. Are you running again when things get hard? Or are you staying this time?" "I'm staying," Kyle said firmly. "For as long as she'll have me." Henry studied him for another long moment, then nodded. "Widow Matthews lives at the north end of town. Small white house with blue shutters." As Kyle turned to go, Henry called after him. "And Ingram? Don't make me regret this." The walk to the widow's house seemed endless. When Kyle finally knocked on the door, it was opened by Mrs. Matthews herself, a plump, kind-faced woman holding a swaddled infant. "Well, look what the wind blew in," she said, not unkindly. "She's out back, hanging laundry." Kyle found Zara in the small yard behind the house, pinning sheets to a clothesline. The last light of day caught in her chestnut hair, creating a halo effect that made his breath catch. She looked tired, with shadows under her eyes, but to Kyle, she had never been more beautiful. "Zara," he said softly. She turned, startled, a clothespin falling from her fingers. For a long moment, she simply stared at him, her expression guarded. Then she resumed hanging the sheet. "You disappeared." "I know," Kyle said, taking a step closer. "I'm sorry." "For days, Kyle." Her voice trembled slightly. "Not a word." "I needed to find a way to ask you to stay," he said. "A way that wouldn't mean sacrificing everything." Zara's hands stilled on the laundry. "What do you mean?" Kyle moved to stand before her, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "Sullivan's offered me a partnership, breeding and training horses for the Army. It means a steady income, a future, a place of our own someday." Hope flickered across her face, quickly replaced by caution. "That's wonderful for you." "For us," Kyle corrected, taking her hands in his. "If you want it to be." Zara pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. "I can't just dismiss Thomas's offer, Kyle. The store is all my father has. Without it, your father can still have the store," Kyle interrupted. "My partnership includes an advance. Enough to buy out your cousin's share." He took a deep breath. "But that's not why I'm here." Slowly, he knelt before her in the dirt yard, looking up at the woman who had changed everything for him. "I'm here because I love you, Zara Darrow. Because the thought of you leaving tore me apart inside. Because every dream I have of the future has you in it." Tears filled Zara's eyes. "Kyle, I know I'm not the sophisticated Boston gentleman your family might have wanted for you," he continued. "My hands are rough, my education limited. But I promise you this. No man on earth will ever love you more truly or work harder to build a life with you." He swallowed hard. "Will you marry me, Zara? Will you stay and build something here with me?" A tear slipped down Zara's cheek. "You disappeared for 4 days, and I thought you decided I wasn't worth fighting for." Kyle rose to his feet, gently brushing the tear from her face. "I was fighting for you. For us. I just needed to find solid ground to stand on first." He gazed into her eyes. "I'll never disappear again. Not for a single day." "I was going to refuse Thomas," Zara admitted softly. "Even without an alternative. Even if it meant losing everything. Because a life without you in it, it's no life I want." Joy surged through Kyle's chest. "Is that a yes?" Instead of answering with words, Zara reached up to pull his face down to hers, pressing her lips against his in their first kiss. Kyle's arms wrapped around her waist, drawing her closer, pouring all the love and promise of their future into that single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, Zara whispered, "Yes. 1,000 times, yes." 2 weeks later, they stood together on the train platform as Thomas Darrow, a thin, pinched-looking man in an expensive Eastern suit, listened incredulously to their counteroffer. "You want to buy me out?" he sputtered. "With what? Cowboy earnings and frontier dust." Kyle remained calm, his hand steady on Zara's back. "With this," he said, handing over a banker's draft for the full amount of Thomas's investment in the store. Thomas examined the draft with obvious surprise. "And my uncle? What becomes of him in this arrangement?" "My father will remain part owner of the store," Zara explained, "with me managing day-to-day operations until he's fully recovered. Eventually, it will become a family business, mine and Kyle's." Thomas looked between them, clearly reassessing the situation. "Well," he finally said, tucking the draft into his jacket pocket, "it seems you found your place in this wilderness, cousin. I wish you joy of it." As they watched the train pull away, carrying Thomas back to Boston, Kyle slipped his arm around Zara's waist. "No regrets?" he asked softly. Zara turned to face him, her green eyes clear and certain. "The only thing I regret is that we wasted so much time doubting what was right in front of us." They were married in the Redstone Springs church on a perfect June morning in 1876. Kyle, handsome in a new suit, waited nervously at the altar as Zara walked toward him on her father's arm. Her dress, sewn from the finest fabric in her store, was simple but elegant, like the woman herself. "You look beautiful," Kyle whispered as she reached his side. Zara's smile was radiant. "Beautiful enough?" "Perfect," Kyle replied, taking her hand in his. "My perfect match in every way that matters." Their life together unfolded like the frontier itself, sometimes harsh, often challenging, but always vibrant and free. The horse-breeding partnership with Sullivan flourished, eventually allowing them to purchase their own small ranch just outside of town. The general store expanded to include Zara's dream, a lending library where she taught generations of Redstone Springs children to read and love books. Henry Darrow recovered enough to help with the store, and more importantly, conquered his battle with alcohol, becoming a respected elder in the growing community. Kyle's nightmares gradually faded, replaced by peaceful sleep in Zara's arms and dreams of their shared tomorrow. On their 5th anniversary, they sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching their 3-year-old daughter chase fireflies in the gathering dusk while their infant son slept in Zara's arms. The hollow space in Kyle's chest had long since filled with a love and belonging he once thought impossible on the frontier. "Any regrets?" he asked, echoing the question he'd posed on their wedding day. Zara leaned against his shoulder, contentment in every line of her body. "Not one," she said softly. "This life we've built, it's more than I ever dreamed possible." Kyle pressed a kiss to her hair, marveling at how the young woman who had once thought herself not pretty enough had become the very center of his world. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For teaching me that the frontier isn't just about survival," he said. "It's about building something worth surviving for." As the stars appeared one by one above their home, Kyle knew with bone-deep certainty that he had finally found what he'd been searching for all his life. Not just a place to belong, but people to belong to. A family, a future, a love strong enough to tame even the wildest frontier of the human heart.